Friends, good morning. Welcome to another live stream. This, of course, being the SPTV News Live part of the channel, as you can see at the bottom. And we're going to be talking about, man, there's going to be a few people in Hollywood waking up out of their Hollywood Hills bed this morning that are not going to be too happy. Among them, Carol Masterson, Danny Masterson's mom, Chris Masterson, Danny Masterson's brother, and a few other not only family members, but culprits, shall we say, that sent a letter in to Judge Olmedo. Now, Judge Olmedo is the one obviously was presiding over the Danny Masterson rape case. Now, between the time that Danny was convicted and then he spent time in jail waiting and the time he was sentenced, we had a slew of letters that came out, not least from Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher, that they didn't expect to be published, that caused a hoopla because they were basically not only protecting a rapist, but making Danny sound like an incredibly glowing figure and basically shitting on the victims. And the latest one to take a fall in that department, as of yesterday, is Chynna Phillips. This is Bijou Phillips' sister, and she was slammed yesterday. Good, because this is sickening to watch what's going on with all these people coming forward. So it's good to see people calling them out. She was slammed for asking for prayers after Danny Masterson's sentencing for the rapes of two women. Danny Masterson's sister-in-law is, of course, Chynna Phillips Baldwin, and she's being slammed by fans online for asking for prayers after Masterson's sentencing. What about asking for prayers for the women that have to live with this horrific act for the rest of their lives? So Chynna is a former member of Wilson Phillips and the wife of actor Billy Baldwin. Posted a quote to Instagram Monday about prayers that received backlash. Now, the main thing that we're going to be covering today, hot off the press from Tony Ortega, are the aforementioned letters that came forward. Now, there's 15 new ones that were just released this morning. I'm only going to read 5 of them, the 5 most important, and most important in the way of people you'd recognize and Danny's actual family members. And the people that are probably going to be, it's their own fault. I feel bad for Carol's mother, that when she wakes up this morning, she's not going to be happy that this long letter that I'm going to read about her son asking for leniency from the judge, she's not going to be happy this is out. So we have Ethan Suplee, whose letter was released today, Peter Masterson, that's Danny's father, Carol Masterson, the mother, Chris Masterson, the brother, and Eric Balfour, who is an actor that ran with this crew, not dissimilar to Ashton. He was very connected in with the Celebrity Center crew. So I'm just going to read 5 of them. I'll insert any anecdotes that pop in, but this is just mostly going to be a reading thing. And if you have any questions, we'll take them up at the end and or as we go along. So sit back, relax, and try to stomach what you're about to hear, because I'll try to lighten it up a little bit, even though it's not a light topic, but it's really disturbing to actually listen to these things. And like I said, they definitely were not planning on these being released because it's not going to look good. And I wonder if there's going to be a firestorm like what happened with Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher, not least their apology video, which made them look worse. It'll be interesting to see by nightfall today or maybe early tomorrow morning if some of these people also catch heat on social media. I feel another storm pending. Anyway, so let's get into this. This is from Tony Ortega this morning. More letters from Ethan Suplee and others on behalf of Danny Masterson to Judge Olmedo. So we can hang out in the chat. I'm sure you guys can see it. And even if you can't, like I said, just sit back and relax, because this is going to be quite a bit of reading. So more letters from Ethan Suplee and others on behalf of Danny Masterson to Judge Olmedo. That's Ethan Suplee. That's Danny Masterson. Last week, we created a firestorm when we published letters by Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis that they had written to Judge Charlene Olmedo. Sorry, my friends, let me get a drink of coffee. I'm just waking up. Asking for leniency after their That 70s Show co-star Danny Masterson was convicted May 31st for 2 counts of forcible rape. Judge Olmedo had to decide between sentencing Masterson to 15 years to life or 30 years to life, and his family recruited numerous friends and relatives, not least Scientologists, to write letters to the court asking for the shorter sentence. Olmedo wasn't swayed, and she sentenced Masterson to the 30 years to life. It was a life sentence, and he has a chance for parole at 30 years. And Kutcher and Kunis were the subject of a huge backlash online when we made their letters public, and I'm sure you guys are up to speed on that. We said then that there were more letters in the file and that some of them, written by Danny's parents and brother Christopher, had been reproduced in the court file in a way that made them difficult to make out. Others, like Ethan Suplee's letter, were cited only partially in our initial copy of the file. Others we just hadn't got to yet. So we've now remedied that, and we can show you the additional full letters that were sent to the judge. Again, these letters were all written. Keep this in mind when you hear this. They were all written to Judge Olmedo after Masterson was convicted of 2 counts of forcible rape. So all these people knew he was a convicted rapist. And before his sentence on September 7th, where he received life in prison, this is Ethan Suplee before on the left, and this is him as of late, all buffed out or whatever. So here's what Ethan has to say. To the Honorable Judge Olmedo, I am writing in regard. Well, actually, let me show you first who the hell Ethan is in case you're not familiar with him. So he's been in a ton of movies. I remember him from Mallrats. He was in Without a Paddle. I believe that was with Dax Shepard, another guy that hangs around with all the Scientologists. He was in American History X. That was a great movie with Edward Norton. He was in Blow with Johnny Depp, Cold Mountain with Nicole Kidman. Since she was a Scientologist probably at the time, I wonder if she helped him get the role. Anyways, so that's who we're talking about right here. And again, he'll be waking up to not a pleasant day today. It'll be interesting, since he's semi-well-known, what the reaction will be when people read his letter. But it's not nearly as bad as poor Carol, man. I mean, that is her son, but you'd think that she would take some responsibility maybe. This is just my opinion, YouTube. And it would be a wake-up call not to recognize what happened and who her son is, rather than booting out Joe, the husband, making we talked about that yesterday, the ex-husband, and making the whole family turn all to protect Scientology and what they can't confront yet, her convicted rapist son. So I'm writing in regard to my friend Danny Masterson. I first met Danny in elementary school when we were children, reconnected with him as teenagers, and we both embarked on our respective acting careers. And over the next 3 decades, ended up working with him several times. I want to say one thing here too, real quick. As I've been going over these, I noticed that these have to be dictated by Scientology, because this is my opinion after reading like 50 of these fucking things. Scientology would have had a script or something for them to basically follow. And what it sounds like to me is something in Scientology where they would have asked these people to write these letters in a certain script involving, hey, remember a moment or two of pleasure moments, as they would call it in the cult, with Danny. What are some really strong, powerful memories of a good guy and what you remember about him? This is used to sway. It doesn't work because it sounds crazy to the outside world, but this would have been used to manipulate the judge and sway her emotionally. And then also they would say, focus on the father aspect of Danny and the daughter. Those are the easiest tools and memories. You'll see they have nothing to do with empathy for the victim, nothing to do with the crimes. It's all selfish and it's manipulative. And I think you'll see that. And I would say that it was definitely set up by Scientology. Anyways, carrying on. I know that so this is Ethan Suplee. I know that Danny has been convicted of forcible rape and is facing a potential sentence of 30 years to life. My firsthand experience is that Danny is most dedicated to and driven by his family. I would extend this out to his brother, sister, mom, and dad. I would even say that he considers his friends to be family, but I think of him as mostly driven to provide for and protect his wife and daughter. Watching him get married and then becoming a father had, in my eyes, a profound effect on him. He poured all of his efforts into being a father and husband. I will try to skip some of these that are boring, my friends, and blaze through these as fast as possible because they're quite trite, but this one isn't too long. When we were teenagers, it was as if Danny was the head of his household as far as his siblings. Yeah, that's because they booted the dad out. Joe, each of his younger siblings followed in his footsteps of becoming actors, with his mom being their manager. When he was on a hit TV show, something rare to happen to a working actor, he had every level of agent and manager approach him, but he would not even consider making a change and leaving his family. It was a point of honor for him that you didn't leave your family. Again, we're stressing the family and the father aspects. And not that my sensibilities are that different, but I just remember his example of loyalty and honor having had an effect on me. Now, this is where it gets really pedantic and weird, and you can tell that it seems Scientology-esque because it doesn't communicate. I worked with Danny a few times, and he always took work very seriously, was utterly professional, courageous, and decent to all. In 2010, we shot an episode of a TV show together in North Carolina. As actors, our wardrobe is placed in our dressing rooms. Again, it's all about acting, not realizing how this would communicate to Olmedo. Trailers in this instant, every day before work. The clothes are always neatly hung and displayed. When we finished work for the day, we leave our clothes in the dressing room to be gathered, cleaned, and prepared for the next day. Knowing that my wardrobe was headed for a washing machine, I would just leave it in a pile on the couch. Danny saw this at the conclusion of our first day of work, and he seemed absolutely horrified by it. He told me that he took great care to rehang all his wardrobe every day, that he treated all aspects of work with respect and expected me to do the same. In other words, he's a control freak. Since that day, I have never again left wardrobe in a heap for someone to collect. Remember, this is a letter going to a man that has been convicted of rape to convince the judge to go easy on him. Do you think it would work? This may seem trivial, but it was his attitude that stuck with me, giving the proper respect to those people and things that I work with. I can vividly recall the first time I visited him on the set of That 70s Show. I would always turn up to my own sets in sweatpants and flip-flops, but when visiting him, I was given instructions that I was not to dress like a bum. Again, control freak, keep up the PR, and hustle like Tom Cruise. He treated every job as though it was his responsibility to show that each and every person he was working with was just as important as any other and to set an air of professionalism. This was just as true years later when I was invited to do episodes of his Netflix show, The Ranch. Going to work was something he took very seriously and treated all those he worked with respect and professionalism. Being an actor means that we often don't know where our next job and paycheck are. There can be more lean times than fat. Every time a job of mine ended, Danny went out of his way to try and find me work on one of his. I saw this with all his friends too. He set me up with another friend who was trying to create a reality show. Some of the writers that he worked with on an earlier job, we worked together and went on to work on The Ranch because of him. He truly wants all his friends to succeed. Well, Carol Manager was my manager for several years, and I don't recall Danny ever getting me a frickin' job. Apparently, I missed that part. Carrying on. I am sure other people are writing to you. Here comes the dedicated father thing again. I'm sure other people are writing to you about what a dedicated father he is, so I will limit myself to not use up your time with that. All I can say is that though I have known Danny since I was a teenager, later I became a father to 4 daughters, and when Danny became a father, it was as if his younger self, full of all his honor and loyalty, could finally realize a true purpose. His wife and daughter are his North Star. And where did we hear North Star? Alana Masterson also said that. So there's more of a clue that it sounds like a script. I have a feeling this is going to be the quote that people jump on social media. That lovely quote. I know that Danny was extensively involved with helping firefighters who were ill or injured on 9/11 and invited me to several fundraisers for a charity he set up. We talked about this before. This is the Volunteer Ministers. And Danny would have used 9/11, like all Scientologists do, in any disaster, to become a volunteer minister. And that's a way of doing pseudoscience on people by way of something called touch assist, passing out water, and trying to convert vulnerable people to Scientology, or at least safe point them. And classic Danny, it was not enough to just attend the event or give money, but actually hang out with these men from New York that he now considered friends and potential Scientology recruits, and therefore should be considered a friend by me. Another example where he taught me about my responsibility as a person to actually present and to give to you your honor. I know there's many factors involved that I don't pretend to even know or think what I could possibly have to say has any bearing on your responsibility whatsoever, even though that's why I'm writing this letter. But as this is my moment to say a word on behalf of someone who I have known for over 30 years and has not only always been a friend, but an example to me, I humbly ask you to sentence him with consideration for how, where he could be of best use to society. Well, Judge Olmedo has decided that that's behind bars for the rest of his life. So that's been taken care of because he has value. Thank you sincerely, Ethan Suplee. Next, we have Jenny Wyman, who was Masterson's former publicist. We're going to skip over this one and just get to the other four. Again, link in the description box if you'd like to see all of these. Basically, what they are is there's the five that I'm going to go over, the celebrities, and Carol and Chris Masterson. But a lot of them are friends, and then there's a couple that is a New York Fire Department person, the owner of La Poubelle, and other things that are semi-interesting. But really, if I sat here and read all these, it would just drive you crazy. So we're only going to cover the pertinent ones that are probably going to get hammered in social media. We had Chris Wadhams, musician and Bijou's kidney donor. And here's what he had to say, basically regurgitating the same script, more or less. Now, let's read Peter Masterson. This is Danny's dad. And we did a little show yesterday on Joe, who was Danny's stepdad, and compare the difference in demeanor. Dear Judge Olmedo, I'm Peter Masterson, the father of Danny Masterson. I'm writing to provide you with an understanding of the man Danny is, beyond what has been presented in the court proceedings. Danny's life started in 1976 when he was born and placed in my arms. I remember whispering to him, I have a new best friend. Our bond has remained unbroken ever since. And again, they're going back into just let's forget about the charges and let me just take you down memory lane. This is kind of long and boring, but let me just try to blaze through it. Being my firstborn son enabled Danny and me to spend a great deal of quality father/son time together. Danny and I shared a love of baseball, swimming, and surfing. During his formative years, we spent countless hours having a backyard cat, swimming at Jones Beach, and surfing the waves. Again, absolutely irrelevant to the trial. Danny was always a good son. I have many wonderful memories of our times together, but this particular moment in time has always had a special place in my heart. At baseball camp, I cannot believe what I'm reading. At baseball camp one summer, there was a bowling incident where a young man threw a hardball pitch directly at Danny's head, resulting in a serious black eye and swollen forehead. When we were driving home from the hospital emergency room, Danny asked me if we could call the parents of the boy who bullied him. It didn't sit well with my son that for no other reason than the fact that he was seen on a TV commercial that this young man taunted him. He wanted to tell the young boy that he was a regular kid, not a celebrity, just a regular guy who loved baseball. And hey, he wanted to be friends. I said, okay. And I invited the parents over for a swim. After we all sat down and talked it out, the boy realized that Danny was just another baseball-loving kid like him. This incident showed me early on that Danny possessed a unique ability to navigate difficult situations with grace that was beyond his years. Again, all related to the rather vapid area of acting. Sounds like he got beat up because he was seen on the commercial. Danny discovered his talent at a very early age. At 4, he was introduced to Ford Modeling Agency for Children. His charisma and maturity beyond his years made him a natural, and he was loved by all who worked with him. His early modeling career eventually led him to acting, which he embraced with equal passion and dedication. Throughout the years, I've watched Danny grow into a successful actor, a dedicated husband, and a loving father. His wife's battle with kidney disease was a challenging time, but Danny demonstrated immense patience, love, and positivity. Now I'm 75 years old, and the thought of not seeing Danny outside of prison again deeply saddens me. I humbly request the court to consider the man Danny has been throughout his life, a good son, a devoted husband, and a loving father. Danny's family, including his mother, stepmother, siblings, wife, and particularly his young daughter who adores and depends on him, all love him dearly. We deeply believe in his potential to positively contribute to his family and society. I retain hope that one day, my best friend and I will be able to share time together again, perhaps at a baseball game. I ask the court for compassion in its sentencing decision, keeping in mind the loving, dedicated, and upstanding man Danny has been throughout his life. Before we get to Carol, it just reminds me of what Joe was saying the other day. Joe is the ex-husband of Carol, and even he was compassionate and said that Peter, was a decent guy. And I don't have kids, man. I can't imagine what that must feel like to be Carol or to be Peter and to actually see your son going through this. But I think if they weren't under the spell of Scientology, a parent that wasn't under that spell would actually take responsibility and accept, even though it hurts, what their son actually did, rather than doing these weird twisted letters and basically shitting on the people that were the victims that were brutalized by their son. So Carol's is the longest, and I'm going to read the whole thing, and then we'll be done shortly after that. But this is pretty intense. Dear Judge Olmedo, I'm writing on behalf of my son, Daniel Masterson. This is the most difficult letter I have ever written. How do I sum up my life with the child I raised and watched grow into a remarkable, humble, and caring man? Sitting through 2 court trials that concluded with my son's 2 convictions for rape by force is not just heartbreaking for me, it's shocking. I hope by providing you this personal information, you will gain more insight into the person he is. Again, not really focusing on what he did in the here and now or in the past, but let's just divert the attention and again go down memory lane. I brought up 4 children, a daughter and 3 sons, with Daniel being the oldest. When Danny was born, Danny's father and I were living in a small house in Happigue, Long Island. This was near where my sister and her family lived. I was working as an ER nurse at the time. Pete Masterson, Danny's father, was selling insurance. We lived a simple middle-class life. When Danny was 9 months old, we moved back to Nassau County to be closer to my work at the hospital and Pete's office. Danny's brother, Christopher, he also wrote a letter, was born 4 years later. We were happy and content with our lives. This does give some interesting history into Carol's and Danny's and Chris's background, like kind of how they were raised and such. Pete was a great father to the boys, playing sports with them and taking them to their baseball and hockey games. Danny was easygoing and friendly. He was an active, sporty, and social child who surrounded himself with friends and family from early on. He started playing Little League when he was 5 years old and continued into high school, where he made the varsity team in his freshman year. Danny also played on the local ice hockey team. His childhood teammates remain friends to this day. Unexpectedly, our lives changed when we were still living on Long Island. When Danny was 4, while walking in a park, a casting agent stopped to ask me if I'd be interested in Danny's modeling children's clothes for magazines and commercials. This is the kind of stuff you hear in movies, but I guess it actually happens. She left me her card. I didn't respond at the time, but I was contacted several more times over the years by agents. Danny was a blonde, curly-haired kid with an outgoing personality. He was what they were looking for at the time. Several years later, I decided to look into it and sent Danny's and Christopher's photos to the Ford agency, which had the best reputation as a family modeling agency. Yeah, that's like the top modeling agency. You'd be like really stoked to get with them. And he signed with them, I guess, at like, 7 or 8? To my surprise, they signed Danny and Chris, and they started getting calls to work immediately. I knew nothing about the modeling or commercial world, but Danny wanted to do it. The boys and I would take the train into Manhattan for auditions and make a day of it by visits to museums, libraries, and theaters. I believe this is where Danny developed his love of books and the arts. I would also take them to Central Park, where they would ride their bikes around or roller skate. In the beginning, we just had fun. The judge is probably like, Jesus, man, I wonder if she even read these, because she has other things to do. And it's just like, just to hear these stories that have nothing to do with the case, I don't even know if she would have read these all the way through. I'm having a hard time. So Danny was soon cast in commercials, and he was hired for photo shoots at some of the largest department stores like Saks Fifth Avenue, Macy's, JCPenney's, and others. He was on the cover of Parent magazine. It was demanding work for a kid that required discipline, but Danny really loved it. I would have never stayed with it if he didn't want to do it. So Carol doesn't sound like a stage mother. Good for her if that's true. I was always there when my sons were working, making sure they were treated fairly and stayed safe. Being in that world, I learned a lot about the business and took on the role of being their business manager. Even though our lives were changing along with our standard of living, Danny remained humbled, kind, and generous. Even after his success, he never flaunted it or tried to make anyone feel like he was better than them. He encouraged all his friends to do their best and championed them in their endeavors. I remember a time while Danny was waiting for his turn at an audition, and there was, again, it's all about acting. And there was another boy up for the same role who was really nervous. Danny began to coach the kid, encouraging him to relax and helping him to memorize his lines. Being the firstborn, he took on the role of being a mentor, protector, and friend and Superman to his siblings. He would spend many hours with his little brothers in the backyard, teaching them to hit and throw a ball. They looked up to him. That's actually very true. And the whole family went to his games to watch him play. Every year during the months of baseball season, Danny would not work, meaning he wouldn't work as an actor, so he could play on a team. He was still a normal kid, don't you know? He did chores around the house. He mowed the lawn and was a stickler for keeping his room clean, unlike his brother, Chris, whose room was always a mess. Danny's father and I divorced in 1984. That's apropos. when Danny was 9 and Christopher was 6. Even after I moved to Florida with the boys, i.e., the Mecca of Scientology in Florida, to brainwash my boys, Pete remained a strong role model for his sons and visited them every month. I remarried in Florida, and my 2 youngest children, Jordan and Alana, were born there. Danny adored his younger siblings and always watched over them and protected them. Now check this out. I think it's coming up. This is where she slams Joe, and the whole disconnection and sordid dissent really begins. My second marriage ended after 8 years, leaving me as a single mother. Jordan and Alana's father was a negative presence in their lives. If you remember what we were talking about yesterday, I think I threw myself off the screen. He was declared a suppressive person. And even though I don't know Joe, after watching that interview and others, he seems like a very decent guy and a guy you also don't want to fuck with. And he was the one that was smart enough in the family to actually suss that Scientology was a con. And I know from personal experience, as I was the only one in my family to figure that out, once you do that, you're declared a suppressive person and you have a very small amount of time to try to wake up your family. Otherwise, you face what Joe faced. And he's been totally disconnected from his family as they immerse themselves in Scientology. And it's just disturbing to hear Carol actually say this. So Jordan and Alana's father was a negative presence, i.e. suppressive person, Satan, Hitler, in their lives. And Danny became more than a big brother. He became their role model, their North Star. My children have a strong bond and really love each other. Yeah, they're trauma bonded. When we moved to Los Angeles, I was a single mother with 4 children. Danny was a teenager with siblings who were 10 and 12 years younger. He would help me on the kids' school runs, baseball practices, and again, ballet classes. We've heard that quite a bit. Whatever they needed, he was there. When I worked late, he made them dinner. He tutored them on their homework and made sure they went to bed early. His siblings looked to him for guidance, that's true, and advice into adulthood. He made sure they knew right from wrong. Are you sure about that? Danny would talk to his siblings about the dangers of drugs and their harmful effects. I know it's come up a lot that he hung out with druggies. We know James DeBello was a fucking massive drug addict. And I don't know about Eric Balfour, but let's just say he hung out with shady people that were fucking doing drugs. I think it's actually possible, as mentioned in a previous video, that he did apply that. It's a huge Scientology thing. And even though he was an alcoholic, this is just a total guess. He might have been a drug addict. Who knows? But I think they're bringing up this drug thing because I believe that he really did try to encourage Ashton and other people to stay off drugs. At that part of the programming, which we all get in Scientology, it's very possible that he just drank and actually didn't smoke weed and stuff, as crazy as that sounds. Take it from a fellow Scientologist. That is a possibility. So the children followed in Danny's footsteps and became actors. Like him, they all learned to work hard and be kind on set by learning all the crew's names as well as other signs of respect. So it was natural for Danny, after he booked that 70s show, to offer guidance to the younger and less experienced child actors he was working with. He mentored them and he warned them of here we are again, of the dangers of drugs that ruin the lives of so many people in the industry. He did that to be there for his colleagues, which is why so many of them, from cast to crew, became close friends. Or maybe that was a way to become close friends so he could then pull them in and manipulate and destroy them, or recruit them to Scientology, or safe point them, as they call it. Since I was a registered nurse, this is Carol still speaking, Danny would often ask my advice about health problems for sick colleagues. He would pay for their health care when they were too ill to work. He knew firsthand what it was to be sick, as here comes the sympathy card. He knew what it's like because he grew up sick with bad asthma, sometimes requiring hospital visits for breathing treatments. As he got older, he developed severe allergies and would break out in hives over his entire body. Sometimes work took him to places all over the world, and when he would have an allergy crisis, he would have to locate a doctor to get a steroid shot. Danny was not a complainer, but his allergies have affected him so severely that his eyes swell shut. Here we go into the investigation. Stand by. If you're just joining us, we're going over the 5 of the 15 letters that came out by, shall we say, high-profile people that are not very happy that their letters to Judge Olmedo have been made public today. Once the investigation of Danny began, he could no longer work as an actor. He sold his house in Los Angeles and moved his family to their farm in San Ynez. I believe that's right outside near Santa Barbara on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Danny has dedicated himself to constructing a winery on the land. Ooh, interesting. Well, I guess he was getting fucked up on the land as well. Allegedly, laboring all day and into the night to build a new life for his family. He took many classes to learn the business and even became a salamander. I don't know what word that is, what the hell that even means. Excuse me. As always, he made friends with his neighbors and always offered a helping hand when they needed it. One of their neighbors, Farmer Craig, told me that Danny drove by one day while he was planting lavender in his field. Danny showed up the next day with his tools, along with several other neighbors and Scientologists, to help. Because Bijou has been so ill over the years, Danny became mother and father to their young daughter. Now, with him no longer there, it's been hard for Bijou to be home, raising their daughter alone. While she has some help from family members, the burden falls on her to do what Danny always did for their daughter. Again, no hate towards Bijou. That fucking sucks. But you can see the manipulation all throughout this about trying to pull on the heartstrings. And, if they weren't Scientologists and they had some sense in their head, they would perhaps throw themselves on the mercy of the court in the way of saying how sorry Danny is, or they are, or go a little bit more into the actual victims rather than reminiscing about all this fucking shit that doesn't mean anything. Excuse my French. So hopefully Bijou will get better. The winery business is also dependent upon him. I'm not sure how they continue without him there. Well, he should have thought of that before he did what he did. There's also the very real possibility that Bijou's body will reject her new kidney. If that happens, I worry about my granddaughter. Again, hope you get better. God bless you. But pulling on the heartstrings, what about the victims? How do you think they feel? I know what you have heard about Danny in court. I hope that my letter, along with countless others from friends and family, will give a fuller picture of my son and his contributions to his family, friends, co-workers, and community. I humbly ask that you consider his whole life when deciding on his sentence and his family's future. Respectfully yours, Carol Masterson. That's the mother. Next up, we got Chris and James DeBello. Then we'll roll out of here. And this is Chris Masterson on Malcolm in the Middle. And we speculated yesterday that we knew Chris wrote one, but it somehow didn't hit the court proceedings. So good on you, Tony, for laying this whole one out. And also Carol Masterson, just last night we talked about her absence was missing, but I speculated that's because the mother might want to stay out of this because it might look too obvious that you're kissing ass or asking for something that might look suspicious. But no, not only was she in it, you saw what she just actually wrote. Again, I don't think any non-Scientologist would have any other reaction from what we've read so far than to be actually deeply disturbed by what they're hearing from these people. Okay, so Chris Masterson, this one's not too long. This is Danny's brother, and here's the lost letter. Christopher Masterson, Danny's brother and actor on Malcolm in the Middle. Dear Judge Olmedo, I am Danny Masterson's younger brother by 4 years. Sitting through both trials and listening to what was said about him was quite a trying experience. The things I heard were not reflective of the brother that I know and have spent my life with. I hope you will consider the information in this letter when you decide on his sentence. I'm not writing about his case or conviction, but about the person I know. Again, detract from what's going on and just try to follow me down memory lane here. But about the person I know, possibly better than anyone else, as his brother and best friend for nearly his entire life. Well, if you're defending a rapist and you don't believe the victims, you didn't know him as well as you thought you knew, Chris. The victims would know him a hell of a lot more than you do. Just saying. Everything I remember from my own life has involved Danny. In the 1980s, as little kids, we began working on the same week of the same summer and continued until the winter of 2017. He was the best man at my wedding. Stand by, please. Got to take a drink of water. And I, the best man at his. We both helped me mom raise our younger siblings And for me, as both an older and younger brother, he taught me a lot about life, relationships, and how to treat others. When I was 12 years old, I was playing with a friend after school when Danny heard me ask if he was sad because his dog had recently died. He pulled me aside and said, quote, "Don't ask people questions about things that make them feel sad unless you know how to help them feel happy again. We're in a perpetually happy mind control cult. You must always be happy." That comment sums Danny up in a few short words. He has always thought about other people from the angle of what do they need? And sometimes, more importantly, what do they not need? Well, they don't need to be raped. This is going to be the quote right here that's going to send, this is my prediction, that's going to send social media, if they do slam Chris, right here about this, because this is absolutely tone deaf. I'll read it again. He has always thought about other people from the angle of what do they need? And sometimes more importantly, what do they not need? And when possible, what can I do to help them fix it? That sounds so Scientology, you know. From where can you communicate to a dog? What can I do to fix it? I'll repeat the auditing command. There's so much Scientologies in here, guys, that I'm hearing that I'm convinced that that Scientology wrote the script for them to follow. For some reason, people often confide in Danny and tell him about their wins and losses in life, their wins and gains. He's always made time for others when they describe their problems, and he always strives to be part of their solution. He's gotten jobs for more out of work people than anyone I've ever known. Again, Danny, I was with your freaking mom for a few years. Why didn't you score me a job, dude? Were you too busy raping people? When someone tells him they can't find a job, he'll immediately ask a million questions, trying to assess their skills and unique talent until he has his light bulb moment, a cognition that inevitably brings him to an aha, I got it moment. You should work for such and such a company, doing such and such a job. You would love working there. I know someone over there. I'm calling them right now to get you hired. Again, that's literally an auditing session he's describing where you get the person to search their memory banks until they have a cognition and they're feeling good and they have a bright idea. So anyone who has ever been on the set of a production Danny has been involved with would have noticed no less than 10 or so crew members who Danny got hired on from previous project he'd worked on. Again, I wasn't even an extra in one of Danny's movies. There was a painter in New York named Mark. Okay, this is a little boring, but let me blaze through it. Again, it's so self-indulgent and so off the topic of the matter at hand. There's a painter in New York named, you know what? This is too boring. Okay, I'm just going to skip this part where he talks about this win that he has with Mike where he got him a freaking job. If you ever got to know Danny in his everyday life, you would quickly realize that there are hundreds of stories like Mike's. On several continents, men and women from all walks of life tell similar stories. This sounds like L. Ron Hubbard's bio. On several continents, men and women from all walks of life tell similar grand stories about a life-altering encounter with Danny. That will probably make the Instagram quote too. As a brother and a friend to me, and as a friend and extended family member to people all over the world. Oh, we're almost done, friends. He has a deep dive. He has a deep drive to be of service to others. All the thanks Danny could ever have hoped for occurred in 2014 when the universe conspired and rewarded his wife and him with a baby girl. From the moment he met his daughter, his focus and priority have been her. Again, we're back to the kids. Pull the heartstrings, break out the violin. Please don't convict Danny. Above all other things, their relationship is that of a father and daughter and that of two very best friends, not to be confused with Best Friends Animal Society. A regular day for them involves picking her up from school and bringing her to one of her favorite restaurants where they will sit, talk, and eat for about an hour or more. They will then go home and climb the hill behind their house to work in the garden and vineyard. This sounds so like 1950s good old boy, and they just get along just swell in their garden and vineyard together until dinner time, at which point they will go home to eat and play board games and or work on homework, watch a movie, or read books before. I heard that Danny doesn't read any books, actually, not least he doesn't read any L. Ron Hubbard. Or read books before he gives her a bath and then lays in bed and tells her stories while she falls asleep. Isn't that sweet? It's just so Beaver Cleaver. I very much hope he can be with her again. He will miss her teenage years. Well, he should have thought about that then, because he didn't just fuck up his life and the gals that he raped, but also he destroyed his daughter's mind and life that she has to look forward to, Bijou's, and everybody around him, including Carol and Peter Masterson, but could eventually be there to help her through many of life's firsts. Alternatively, for all intents and purposes, she will not have a father for the rest of her life. He is everything to her, and she would love nothing more than to be reunited with him. Again, total manipulation, in my opinion. What do you guys think? I appreciate you taking the time to read my letter, respectively, Christopher Masterson. Now, I did find Chris, like I said, in the very brief moment, to be quite a cool guy. I don't know anything about him, but he definitely didn't put off the vibes of said rapist. So one more here, my friends, and then I'll scroll through questions. If you have any questions, by the way we'll do it now, which will make it easy, can you put like 3 or 4 question marks first so I can easily see if you have a question, and then write it out, and then I can just scroll through them really, really quickly. Okay, so Eric Balfour is the next one and final one. And like I said, if you're just joining us, link in the description box if you'd like to see the 15 new people that was released today that wrote letters to be lenient on actor Danny Masterson. Here's Eric Balfour. He's an actor, and I did meet Eric once. Carol, we were talking about in the last video how when you sign with like a Scientology agent or manager or whatever, you get an instant click sometimes. So Carol would get me into auditions that had to do with people that were friendly with Scientology or Scientologists themselves. And Eric was really, really integrated in this celebrity center click / B-level actor scene. And I remember at the audition, I was there for a long time, and there were Scientologists that I knew and would hang out with that came in often. He wasn't an actor on this thing I was auditioning for. He was a producer, and that's the only time I met him. So let's see. I don't even know what the hell he's done. I mean, I've seen him in some things, but I would say he's probably a C-level actor or whatever. What's he known for here? What Women Want, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Oh, I remember him in that one. That was a pretty good movie. 6 Feet Under, some recurring role on 24, etc. So let's read what he has to say, and then we'll roll out of here. I mean, I'm definitely going to need a barf bag after this. This is, I'm trying to keep it light. I'm not trying to make it a joke, but this, in case you guys have been watching the last few videos, this has been kind of emotional, man. Like this whole thing about Danny actually being convicted, revisiting all the people and faces and stuff that are popping up on the screen that I'm sharing with you. So pardon me if I'm a little emotional, but it's also therapeutic. These are emotions of longing for something to actually happen with Scientology. So Eric Balfour, actor, the Honorable Judge Olmedo. My name is Eric Balfour. I'm a founder of Off the Grid Entertainment, a Los Angeles-based production company. I've known Danny for almost 30 years. We met as teenagers when we were both working as actors on the same project, and our families have been close friends ever since. I was drawn to Danny because of his integrity and sincerity. Well, you better check your intuition markers going forward, Eric, because you got that one wrong. Danny was always kind and respectful on set and to anyone he came in contact with. He was always the first to protect and defend someone weaker than himself or someone who has been bullied in any way. I'm not defending Danny, but I did see a moment on Ashton Kutcher's Punk'd where Danny was set up in a way. I don't remember what it was. It's impossible to find on YouTube, man. If anybody actually can find it, let me know because I've been looking for it, but it's not up. There was a guy that was trying to steal something or whatever, and Danny actually did step in and look like he was going to beat the shit out of him until the guy put the thing back that he was stealing. So I remember at the time seeing that, and I was a Scientologist at the time, and I was like, Danny is a fucking badass that does have integrity. So I don't know what to say about that, but if anybody can find that punk scene, I think you'll say what I'm talking about. So maybe he did, try to beat people's asses if they did something that was un-Scientological or whatever. Continuing on. So we'll just skip to here. Did we cover that? Yeah, he was always the first to protect and defend someone weaker than himself or someone who has been bullied in any way. In the many years of knowing Danny, I have only ever seen him to be a kind, compassionate, and a caring person, especially to his daughter and his wife. Again, we're back to that, whom he loves beyond measure. Danny's an incredibly loving and present father, an honorable husband, and ethical provider. Now, if that was true, he would have some remorse about the daughters, sons and daughters of the victims. So I don't believe that at all. Either these people were snowed, they know damn well what his character was, or again, just an opinion. He's a good sociopath that puts on the charm, ropes people in through love bombing, and they're kind of basically abused without knowing it. Or if you're one of the victims that he actually violently raped, you do know it. There's countless incidences of Danny's kindness and empathy that I have seen over the course of our friendship. I've seen Danny go above and beyond to help someone in need, even myself. There was never a time when I was facing a challenging decision or gotten my heart broken when Danny wouldn't rush to meet me and sit and listen and offer an empathic word of advice to ease my pain. This is truly the core of the person that I know. Thank you for taking the time to read and consider this as you make this decision that will affect so many people's lives. Sincerely, Eric Balfour. Now, the rest of these are friends and a couple of interesting people, but I will leave a link in the description box. So on your own time, you can read all 15 of them if you want. We only covered 5. This is the owner of La Poubelle. I don't know how to pronounce the name, Francois Coster, but this is the place that everybody would hang out with because it was right across the street from Celebrity Center, and all the hip Scientology actors would hang out there, as well as just it was kind of hip central or whatever. There was La Poubelle and something called the Pig something or rather. And like I said, it was right across the street, and I've spent many, many a days down there. I think that's one of the restaurants that one of the Jane Does was allegedly drugged, but not allegedly raped. So he makes a statement, and we have, I'll just see if there's any more important ones. And then we have David Traynor, who's just some television director. And we have Phil Azu, retired deputy sheriff, because they always have cops or they safe point everybody from politicians to cops, but especially in LA and Clearwater, Florida, they have a whole program to safe point with people like this. And now I doubt the deputy's a sheriff, but he would talk good of them because of their safe pointing activities. We're going to do a whole video, like I said, having to do with Celebrity Center, their Christmas games and such, to show you exactly how that works. Travis Warner, he's a film composer, is kissing ass here. And what else do we have? I think the rest are basically just friends. Yeah, Erica Cruzen, LMFT, that I don't even know what the hell that means, but from beyond here, it's just friends. So that about covers today's episode, my friends. Like I said, I will blaze through the comments here and see if you have done the aforementioned question mark thing, which would make it really easy if we could drill that in. But if not, we'll roll out of here. We got plenty more videos and shit coming, so this is probably just the first one for today. But I gotta go to sleep, man. Andy, what's going on, my man? And yes, you look fabulous. Notice the adjectives used are the same used by past COS PR releases. Go to the head of the class, Andy. Either you just joined us or you stole my pontification earlier, but that's exactly right. I think, Andy, they were actually written as a script by Scientology for all these people, be it Scientologists or not, to follow. And like I said, if you're just joining us, it had to do with, I imagine, telling the people to remember one or two very positive moments that stick out in your mind with Danny, where he was an honorable person, and make sure you accent the kid, Bijou's kid, and his kid, and how great of a father he is. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. No doubt about it. Scroll through to make sure this actually works really well, because I can go really quick if you guys put those freaking question marks out. Here we go. DX, come to the front of the line. How were these letters obtained? That's a good question, my friend. I don't know that. To my knowledge, Tony Ortega was the first one to release the original ones, featuring, among other people, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, and that's what started the shitstorm and the apology video for them. As far as I know, Tony was the first one to put this out. Now, I've heard Aaron say, no, he's not. He just sort of sneaked it out and everybody else has him. Well, I don't know that to be true. I just know that Tony has been the first one on this, and he just put out these 15 names about like 4 hours ago. How they were obtained? Well, I don't think that I'm pretty damn sure that the people that wrote these didn't know that they were going to be public, even though I'm not quite sure how that would be possible. They're prominent people. They'd probably want to make sure. But from what I understand, they didn't know this was going to be public. And therefore, because if they did, they wouldn't write them. And then, but I think that they were legally allowed to be made public. So how they were obtained probably wasn't some spy novel type shit. I think they were just legally allowed to release them. That's my guess. If anybody knows, how that came about. I'd love to know in the comments afterwards if you wouldn't mind. Scrolling through the comments here. There we go. Paula, how are you doing, my friend? It's good to see you. Is Carol the agent for Ashton and or Mila? Carol is a manager. There is a difference. The manager generally takes 15% of your earnings and the agent takes 10%. A lot of actors have both. How do I even explain what they do? Well, if you have a really good manager, you almost don't even need an agent because they can basically do the same thing. It's best to have both of them working for you. And Carol being a manager, I know when I was with her, and I don't think before or since, she's never managed Ashton or Mila. A lot of Scientologists like Justin Mooney was on the roster. Of course, Danny and Chris were managed by her. I'm trying to think of who the hell she managed when I was with her. I don't fucking remember, but she had X amount of stars and X amount of people like me and Justin Mooney that were kind of newbies, and we got took on because she thought we had potential. The way I actually got signed by her is I did a monologue, this really like crazy, scary monologue in the middle of her, I don't know what the fuck you call it, the main room, just standing there. And she's like, all right, go ahead, kid, show me what you got. And then she signed me like when I was done 10 minutes later. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but okay. Any other questions? This is really, really easy to go through. I won't miss one of them probably if you guys do the question mark thing. Okay, almost done. Don't want to miss anybody. Can't stand dead airtime. All right, I think we got it. Okay, my friends, like I said, more to come. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification if you're interested in the shit. I don't know if it works, but you'll know when we jump in. And thanks for hanging out with us again. Like I said, the times are so mad and there's so much changing with Scientology and so much coming forward that, man, it's a great time to be alive, to be a Scientology watcher, and to watch this thing free fall. Hopefully, I don't want to get too excited, but it looks like we're finally on the dip and this thing's going to start to free fall. And this is just the beginning of all this fucking shit show.
Physical labor, an intense ideological study used to break the subject's will, or is that the case?